I found a real blood jade hairpin at a flea market for $5. My roommate saw it, her eyes green with envy. It's just a cheap fake. Look at you, so proud of yourself. Did some wannabe sugar daddy buy that for you? The next day, she wore my hairpin to the school's historical costume club event, showing it off to everyone as her family's heirloom. The vendor told me the pin was taken from a cursed tomb, stained with 1,000 years of resentment. Seeing it in her hair, I tried to warn her not to wear it. Instead, my roommate started a rumor about me, insisting it was her family's heirloom. I woke up to an empty dorm room. The decorative box on my desk was wide open. The blood jade hairpin was gone. Did someone break in? Then a possibility hit me. I unlocked my phone, and the first thing on my Instagram feed was a 9-picture post from Chloe. In the photos, Chloe was dressed in an expensive custom-made historical gown, her hair piled in an elaborate updo. Tucked into it was a hairpin, blood red from tip to tail. It was the one I'd bought yesterday. Under the spotlights, the twin lotus flowers on the head of the pin looked so sinister it seemed like they would start dripping blood at any moment. Chloe stood center stage, smiling beautifully. The caption read, "Wearing a family heirloom for the first time. It really does go best with historical clothing." The comments were a flood of praise. "Chloe, your family has so much class. That pin looks priceless. A literal goddess has graced us. You look absolutely stunning. Sarah, look. Your roommate's hairpin looks just like the one you posted yesterday." The person who tagged me was a classmate. I scrolled past the comment without expression. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Chloe's boyfriend, Mark. It was an HD close-up of Chloe, her eyes demurely lowered, but the hairpin in her hair was so eerie it completely stole the show. "Mark, Sarah, you should stop buying so many fakes. Look at a real antique from Chloe's family. It has so much more presence." What a hypocrite. He tried to ask me out before, and I ignored him. After he got with Chloe, he'd secretly message me, constantly comparing her to me. I didn't reply. Chloe was a total drama queen, and a complete copycat. When I declared my history major, she transferred from the finance department the very next day. I loved wearing linen maxi dresses, so she bought a whole wardrobe of boho-style clothes. She got off on the thrill of one-upping me in every way. It was her way of proving that anything I liked, she could have, and hers would always be better and more expensive. This time, she was pulling the same old trick. Except she had no idea that this was one hairpin she couldn't afford to wear. I slowly got out of bed and changed my clothes. The vendor's words were still ringing in my ears. "Listen, kid, this pin came out of a newly unearthed, cursed tomb. The resentment clinging to it is seriously strong. You've got the right kind of aura to control it, but if anyone else tries, who knows what could happen?" I picked up my phone and called Mark directly. He picked up quickly, his voice impatient. "Sarah? What? Finally realized the difference between you and Chloe?" I let out a small laugh. "Mark, you'd better get Chloe to take that hairpin out. Right now." Mark laughed mockingly. "Are you jealous? Chloe is beautiful, comes from a good family, you're not even in her league. Thank God I didn't waste my time on a dead end like you. Did this guy really think I cared about any of that? I didn't have time to waste. Tell her to take it off. If she doesn't, she'll face the consequences. I wonder, Chloe, if your luck is strong enough for this?" Chloe never came back to the dorm that day. I sighed. I knew she wouldn't listen to me. Late that night, Chloe finally returned, reeking of alcohol, and wearing the triumphant expression of a winner. She tossed her bag onto a chair, saw me sitting at my desk reading, and scoffed. "Sarah, still reading those lame old books?" She walked to the mirror and carefully removed the blood jade hairpin. Her fingertips caressed the cool jade over and over, her eyes filled with a greedy, obsessive fascination. "So beautiful," she murmured to the hairpin. "This is what you call a real treasure." I closed my book and turned to look at her. "You like it?" She froze, then stiffened her neck. "Of course I do. It's my family's heirloom. How could I not?" "Is that so?" I said coolly. "Because yesterday it was in my box." The color drained from Chloe's face. She looked like someone whose carefully crafted lie had just been exposed, and she flew into a rage. "Sarah, what are you trying to say? It's just a stupid hairpin. Me wearing it is a compliment." Besides, yours is obviously a cheap glass knockoff. Mine is real jade. Why would I steal your junk? She crossed her arms, glaring at me as if I were the one being unreasonable. I wore it today, and everyone in the historical costume club said it was gorgeous. Mark said so too, that only I deserve something this precious. Unlike some people who only deserve fakes. I didn't argue with her. My gaze fell on the side of her forehead. On the patch of skin where the hairpin had been resting, a small, faint red rash had appeared, like a mosquito bite. Since it's your family heirloom, you should take good care of it. I looked away, a flicker of pity in my eyes. Whatever you do, don't lose it. With that, I pulled my bed curtain shut and ignored her. I heard her scoff dismissively from the other side, followed by the sound of a drawer opening and a lock clicking shut. In the darkness, I could almost hear the blood jade hairpin let out a sigh of satisfaction. It had found a new owner. The next morning, Chloe was jolted awake by her own piercing scream. I pulled back my curtain to see her holding a mirror, her face a mask of terror. The red rash on her temple had spread overnight, growing several times larger and turning an angry, purplish red. Tiny blisters had even started to form on it. It looked gruesome. Ah, my face! She shrieked, completely losing it. Sarah, was it you? Did you do something to my hairpin? She rushed to my bedside and grabbed my arm, her nails digging deep into my skin. That cheap hairpin you bought must be poisoned. You're trying to hurt me. I yanked my arm free and stared at her coldly. Chloe, have you lost your mind? That's your family heirloom. What's it got to do with me? My words were like a bucket of cold water, snapping her back to reality. That's right. Yesterday, in front of everyone, she claimed it was hers. She couldn't admit to stealing it from me, and she definitely couldn't admit that there was something wrong with the hairpin itself. Chloe's face shifted between pale and flushed before she glared at me through clenched teeth. Don't you look so smug? It must be an allergic reaction to the seafood I ate yesterday. She hastily threw on a mask and a hat, covering half her face, and ran to the campus clinic. Chloe came back that afternoon, holding a tube of ointment, which she slammed onto my desk. The doctor said it's contact dermatitis. He prescribed this. It was $180. You're paying. I looked at her like she was an idiot. Why would I pay for it? Because it's your fault. She finally exploded. You bought that poisonous fake junk and left it in our room. It contaminated the air and made me have an allergic reaction. Her logic, in its own twisted way, was perfect. I was so annoyed I had to laugh. Chloe, if you think there's something wrong with your brain, the hospital is right off campus. They have a psych ward. You. She was speechless. A few minutes later, a hot new post appeared on the university's online forum. Huge drama alert. History major gets jealous, poisons beautiful roommate. The original post vividly described a poor but vicious girl, and how, out of jealousy for her roommate's family and beauty, she'd taken action. It claimed she bought a cheap, poisonous accessory and deliberately left it in their dorm room, causing her roommate's beautiful face to break out in a severe allergic reaction. The post included a tragic photo of Chloe showing only the wound on her forehead, along with a picture of the receipt for the ointment from the clinic. Even though the post was anonymous, keywords like history department, beautiful roommate, and heirloom hairpin basically pointed a giant finger at our dorm room. Instantly, the forum erupted. OMG, that girl is so evil. You can't judge a book by its cover. She looks so plain, but her heart is so black. I feel so bad for the OP. Isn't she that goddess from the historical costume club? She looked so amazing yesterday. Chloe sat across from me, refreshing the post to read all the messages of sympathy for her and curses aimed at me. A smug smile played on her lips, her eyes filled with the thrill of revenge. She thought this was her victory. The story blew up faster than I could have imagined. Walking on campus, I could feel eyes on me from every direction, people pointing and whispering. Look, that's her. The evil girl who ruined her roommate's face. With a face like that, no wonder she's jealous of someone like Chloe. I heard she's always buying knockoffs, trying to pretend she's a rich girl. The rumors and gossip washed over me like a tidal wave. Chloe's boyfriend, Mark, even brought people to block the door of my classroom after class. He was decked out in designer clothes, flanked by two big jocks, his expression arrogant. When he saw me come out, he grabbed the collar of my shirt. What the hell happened to Chloe? Was this your doing? You evil woman. I calmly brushed his hand away. Mark, you need evidence before you start talking. She's the one who stole the hairpin, and she's the one who wore it. What does that have to do with me? You. Mark was shaking with rage. Sarah, apologize to Chloe and pay for her emotional distress. If you don't, I'll make your life at this university hell. I looked at him and found it laughable. On what grounds? Because Chloe is my girlfriend, he sneered, and because my family donated a building to this school. The students around us gasped, their gazes turning even more contemptuous. I had become the villain in their story. The overreaching, evil girl trying to mess with the powerful rich kid and his poor, innocent damsel in distress. Over the next few days, the rash on Chloe's forehead didn't get better, it got worse. After the blisters popped, the fluid that oozed out seemed corrosive. Her skin began to ulcerate in small patches, emitting a faint, sickly sweet smell. Chloe started spending 2 hours on her makeup every day, trying to cover the wound with thick layers of concealer, but it only made it more obvious. The more she suffered, the more she directed all her hatred toward me. She started an allergy diary on her social media, posting daily updates. Every post was laced with implications that I was the cause of all her pain. Chloe gained a lot of sympathy and her follower count shot up. Meanwhile, I was called in by my advisor, ostracized by my classmates, and even the cafeteria lady's hand would tremble when she served me food. Chloe's arrogance reached its peak. She reveled in the dual pleasure of grinding me under her heel, while also earning everyone's pity. That night, it was just the two of us in the dorm. After taking off her makeup, Chloe stared at the increasingly horrifying wound in the mirror. She suddenly, hysterically, swept every bottle and jar off her desk and onto the floor. Why? Why won't it heal? She whipped her head around, her bloodshot eyes locked on me. It's all you. Sarah. You bitch. You ruined me. Chloe lunged at me like a madwoman, trying to scratch my face. I was ready for it. I sidestepped her attack and grabbed her wrist. I noticed a patch of red spots had appeared on her wrist as well. Chloe, have you ever considered? I said with a cold smile, that maybe, it's not an allergy? Chloe froze. It's your family heirloom. It's alive. What the hell are you talking about? Chloe instantly flew into a rage. But in her eyes, a flicker of undeniable fear flashed. I shoved her hand away and took a step back, putting distance between us. You've been having nightmares lately, haven't you? I asked. Chloe's pupils contracted. You dream of a woman in a red dress. She has no face, and she's always chasing you, asking why you stole her things. Chloe's lips began to tremble, and her face went as white as a sheet. How did you know? Because. My eyes grew dark. The original owner of that hairpin died a violent death. Her face was skinned off while she was still alive, and turned into the surface of a drum. Her resentful spirit never dissipated. It attached itself to this hairpin, her most beloved possession. And what she hates most are women like you. Thieves and liars who steal what belongs to others. My voice seemed to hang in the air of the silent dorm room, an eerie, ethereal quality to it. Combined with the darkness, it was enough to make one's blood run cold. No, that's impossible. You're lying. That's just superstitious nonsense. Chloe's neck was stiff as she argued, but she didn't dare look at me. And she especially didn't dare look at the drawer where the hairpin was locked away. Believe what you want. I said no more and turned back to my desk. I knew that once the seed of doubt was planted, it would grow wildly in her mind. I still needed a backup plan for when she got desperate. The next day, I skipped my classes and took a 2-hour bus ride back to that chaotic flea market. As expected, the stall where the vendor had sold me the hairpin was gone. I didn't give up. I spent the whole afternoon wandering through the market. Finally, in a forgotten corner, I found someone who knew him. I slipped him $500. The man lit a cigarette and slowly told me that the vendor, an old guy named Leo, had skipped town a few days ago. Because the stuff he sold wasn't clean. That hairpin came from an unmarked tomb they just dug up down south. They say the owner was an emperor's favorite concubine. She was the most favored, and also the most jealous. Later, the Empress framed her for stealing, and she was beaten to death. That tomb is seriously bad news. Everyone who went down came back sick. And that blood jade hairpin, it's the most beautiful piece, but also the most cursed. I took out my phone and turned on the voice recorder. Sir, would you mind repeating all of that for me? I slightly exaggerated Leo's potential involvement in illegal grave robbing. I hinted that if the police came asking questions, he, as a witness, could be implicated too. The man hesitated for a moment, but ultimately recounted everything he knew in detail. With the recording secured, I felt a lot more confident. When I got back to school, I didn't release the recording right away. Instead, I used a burner account to post on the forum. A technical analysis. Is historical costume goddess Chloe's heirloom blood jade hairpin really from her family? In the post, I analyzed the hairpin in detail, from its material and carving style to the patina of the jade. I pointed out that its design was consistent with the regulations for the imperial family of a specific dynasty. It was impossible for a commoner to own such an item, let alone pass it down as a family heirloom. Finally, I attached a clipped segment of the recording, removing any identifying information, leaving only the line. That hairpin came from an unmarked tomb they just dug up down south. It was like dropping a bomb. The post instantly blew up the entire forum. All the adoration people had for Chloe turned into pure rage. Holy crap! From an unmarked tomb? That's grave robbing. Isn't that illegal? I knew it. Family heirloom, my ass. If her family was that important, would she be on campus trying to land a rich boyfriend? So not only is she a thief, she's an idiot. She stole her roommate's stuff, and then bragged everywhere that her family robbed a grave to get it? Wait, the main point is that her face is messed up. Could this be like karma? Kinda creepy when you think about it. The tide of public opinion turned overnight. Chloe became a thief, a liar, and even the family member of a grave robber. All the people who had defended her before quickly deleted their posts and issued apologies, terrified of being associated with her. Mark was the first to distance himself, posting on his story, "Don't know her. We broke up." The picture was a selfie of him with another girl. Chloe completely fell apart. She locked herself in the dorm room, too scared to go out or even look at her phone. I could hear her muffled sobs from her bed, and her screams whenever she woke up from a nightmare. The ulcer on her forehead had already spread to her cheek, and the sickly sweet smell was getting stronger. The doctor had tried several different medications, but nothing worked. He even suggested she go to a major hospital to have a biopsy done on her skin. She was too afraid to go. She was terrified. That evening, I had just finished washing up and returned to the dorm to find Chloe kneeling in front of my desk. Her hair was a mess, and tear tracks stained her face. When she saw me, she crawled forward on her knees and grabbed the hem of my pants. "Sarah, I was wrong. I was so wrong." Chloe was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. "The hairpin, I'll give it back to you. Just make it stop. Please, I'm begging you." She pointed at her own face, her voice filled with despair and terror. "It's eating my flesh, I can feel it, and it's still hungry." Chloe took the decorative box from her drawer and held it out to me with trembling hands. "I shouldn't have stolen your things. I shouldn't have framed you. I'll do anything you want, just please save me." If she'd only known this would happen, she might have acted differently. "Chloe," I said, pulling my pant leg from her grasp and looking down at her. "You're sorry now? It's too late. This isn't mine." I pointed at the hairpin. "From the moment you put it on your head and called it yours, it has recognized you as its one and only master." All the blood drained from Chloe's face. The next afternoon, Mark, who couldn't stand being harassed by Chloe anymore, came to find me again. "Sarah, what will it take for you to leave Chloe alone? Do you want to save Chloe? If I don't, she won't stop bothering me. Come to our dorm tonight. And remember, you have to come alone." That night, Mark came by himself. I picked up the soul-calming bell from my desk and gave it a gentle shake. Ding. A single, clear ring echoed far into the night. Lying on her bed, Chloe's eyes shot open. But those weren't her eyes. They were empty, venomous, and filled with an endless sorrow. Chloe slowly sat up, her movements stiff, like a marionette controlled by strings. Then she turned her head and stared intently at Mark. Mark was so scared he fell to the floor, scrambling backward. Chloe, you don't scare me. The thing possessing Chloe's body smiled. It was a mournful, tragic sound. Faithless man. All men in this world are faithless. She pointed at Mark. Do you love her? Would you do anything for her? Mark was too terrified to speak, just nodding frantically. Good, very good. She smiled wider, but 2 streams of bloody tears rolled down her cheeks. In my life, I too once heard such words. But in the end, all I received was a cup of poison and a cheap straw mat for a shroud. Tell me, is that fair? Mark wouldn't have dared to answer. My hairpin is not for just anyone to wear. She stole my possession, so she must pay with her life. Unless. Her gaze shifted back and forth between me and Mark. Unless someone is willing to take her place and bear this suffering for her. Are you willing? She was asking Mark. The color drained from Mark's face. He glanced at Chloe's disfigured face, then at the now sinister dorm room. He shook his head violently, babbling incoherently. No, it wasn't me. She's the one who stole the hairpin. She's the one who wore it. It has nothing to do with me. Please let me go. I'll burn paper money for you. I'll build you a temple. Hearing this, the smile vanished from her face. In its place was infinite disappointment and a chilling killing intent. Another faithless man. Just as she was about to strike Mark, I shook the bell again. She froze. Ah. Mark, his face a mask of terror and relief, scrambled to his feet and bolted out of the room. Without Mark's help, Chloe was on the verge of a complete breakdown and finally called her parents. They showed up with a lawyer and stormed directly into the advisor's office. As the other party involved, I was called in as well. The moment Chloe's mother saw me, she lunged at me like a madwoman, thankfully restrained by her husband. It was you. You're the little bitch who did this to my daughter. She pointed at me, her eyes vicious. Look what you've done to my daughter. Her face is ruined. You will pay for this. You have to. Chloe's father was much more dignified. He adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses and spoke to the advisor. Sir, we have been briefed on the situation. This student, Sarah, out of jealousy, maliciously purchased an unknown, poisonous item that has caused severe physical and psychological harm to my daughter. We demand that the university expel her immediately, and we reserve the right to pursue further legal action against her. The lawyer beside him nodded, handing over a document. Chloe hid behind her mother, glaring at me with venomous eyes, a smug smirk on her lips. The ulcerated area on her face was even larger, so bad that the thick layer of foundation couldn't hide the bumpy texture of her skin, or the fluid faintly seeping through. Most of her hair had fallen out, revealing patches of her scalp where the blood jade hairpin was still firmly embedded. It looked as if it had grown directly out of her flesh. Its crimson color was even more lurid than before. I knew she was trapped. If she didn't wear the hairpin, the nightmares would come every night, but if she did, her face would only get worse. Chloe was completely cornered. Now, she was pinning all her hopes on her parents. Chloe was convinced that my curse was what had ruined her. She believed that if she could just push all the blame onto me, get me kicked out of school, or even sent to jail, the wounds on her face would finally heal. The advisor looked at them, then at me, with a troubled expression. Sarah. He wiped sweat from his brow. Look, Chloe's condition is clearly very serious. How about, you start with an apology? He was just trying to smooth things over, to get me to back down. I laughed. Apologize? Why should I apologize? I met the murderous glares of Chloe's parents and said, neither servile nor overbearing, from the very beginning. It was Chloe who stole my property and then turned around and slandered me. Now that there's a problem with the item, you're telling me I'm responsible? What kind of logic is that? How dare you argue? Chloe's father slammed his hand on the table, furious. How much could that cheap pin possibly be worth? Our Chloe's face is priceless. You did this deliberately as revenge. They were adamant that the hairpin was a trap I had set. As for Chloe's theft, they dismissed it as kids just joking around. They had numbers, they had a lawyer, and they were experts at twisting the truth and calling black white. I was alone, unable to defend myself against their accusations. The advisor's expression grew grimmer. He looked at me with a mixture of urgency and warning. Chloe's father spoke again. If you just tell us what poison you used, We might consider being lenient. It was clear they had already decided I was the culprit. I looked around the room, my gaze finally landing on Chloe's rotting face. I let out a soft laugh and slowly shook my head. I can't save her. When you steal from others, you have to pay the price. She brought this on herself. This hairpin is called the Blood Jade Twin Lotus. It was a burial object for a concubine from a past dynasty who died unjustly. She was betrayed by her emperor and her sisters, forced to drink poison, and her body was tossed into a mass grave. 1,000 years of resentment are all condensed within this pin. With every word I spoke, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Everyone was stunned into silence by my story. Chloe's mother was so frightened she turned pale and stumbled backward. You're lying. There are no such things as ghosts. Believe it or not. I looked at the top of Chloe's head. She put on the hairpin and paraded it around as her family heirloom. The spirit of the concubine heard her, and naturally, she wasn't pleased. You steal her most prized possession, and then you try to steal her identity. How do you think she's going to deal with a little thief? Chloe's mother, after catching her breath, started cursing at me again. You little bitch, stop trying to scare us. You're making up stories just to evade responsibility. Since you insist this hairpin is mine, I said, suddenly changing my tone, then let's just call the police. Everyone froze, including Chloe. She never expected that under such immense pressure, not only would I refuse to yield, but I would be the one to suggest calling the cops. Chloe's father frowned. What are you trying to say? I mean, let's let the police handle it. I took out my phone and pretended to dial. It just so happens I have a recording right here, proving that this blood jade hairpin came from a recently robbed ancient tomb. Grave robbing, trafficking cultural artifacts, those are major felonies. I spoke slowly, my eyes scanning each person's face in the room. And Mississippi Chloe. I looked at her and smiled faintly, as the current holder of this stolen item will probably have to explain to the officers exactly how this family heirloom was passed down into her hands. The color drained from Chloe's face. Her parents' expressions turned incredibly ugly. They could throw their weight around, use their money to pressure the school, but they didn't dare openly challenge the law. Especially not when it involved grave robbing and cultural artifacts. You're slandering us. Chloe's mother blustered, her bravado failing her. The police will find out whether I'm slandering you or not. I waved my phone. Oh, by the way, I had some free time the other day, so I already anonymously mailed the relevant information and the recording to the city's Bureau of Cultural Heritage. If I've timed it right, they should be showing up any day now. And I imagine they'll be far more interested in a lead on a grave robbing and smuggling ring than in a college student's skin condition. It was the final blow. The office fell deathly silent. Chloe's parents stood frozen like statues, the arrogance and anger on their faces replaced by sheer terror and disbelief. They never imagined that I, a seemingly weak and defenseless poor student, was holding a trump card that could drag their entire family down with me. They wanted to crush me with their power. So I flipped their whole table over. The advisor's mouth was hanging open wide enough to fit an egg. The lawyer silently retracted the document he was holding and took a step back, as if trying to distance himself from the family. Suddenly, a horrifying, inhuman screech tore from Chloe's throat as she clawed wildly at the air. The patch of rotten skin on her neck split wide open. Dark, reddish-black blood sprayed out. The putrid smell in the room intensified tenfold. Chloe! Her father screamed in panic. The people from the Bureau of Cultural Heritage arrived even faster than I expected. 2 officials in uniform with serious expressions came directly to the dorm. When they showed their badges and demanded that Chloe surrender the artifact in question, Chloe, still in shock from her wound bursting open, didn't dare resist. With trembling hands, she pulled the blood jade hairpin from her head. An official put on white gloves and carefully placed the hairpin into a protective case. Under the fluorescent lights, the pin glowed an even more lurid red, as if it were saturated with blood. We will be conducting a full investigation into the origin of this item, one of the officials said to Chloe. During this period, we will need your full cooperation. Chloe couldn't even manage a single word. She just nodded repeatedly, tears streaming down her face. The situation had completely blown up. To protect its reputation, The university immediately issued a statement on its official website. It promised to fully cooperate with the authorities and to deal seriously with the student involved. The name Grave Robber's granddaughter spread like wildfire across campus, permanently attached to Chloe. To prove he had cut all ties, Mark even paid for articles to be published online claiming he had long suspected Chloe's character was questionable and that she had deceived him. The Historical Costume Club expelled her and posted a long essay denouncing her for tarnishing traditional culture. Her parents never came back to the school. I heard they were busy pulling every string they could to get Chloe out of the mess, but with little success. The hairpin was identified as a Grade 3 national cultural relic, and the grave robbing network behind it was extensive. As a key link in the chain, Chloe had no way to escape. She was completely and utterly alone. No one sympathized with the wounds on her face anymore. Instead, they became proof of her lies and greed. She lived every day in a state of terror and despair. After the hairpin was gone, the ulcers on her face didn't heal. In fact, under the immense psychological pressure, they got worse. A skin graft surgery failed. The new skin quickly developed the same symptoms. Her face had become a festering abyss. One day, she smashed every mirror in the dorm room. The final blow I dealt her wasn't the law, and it wasn't public opinion. It was making her personally shatter everything she had once been so proud of, her beauty, her vanity, and her lies. The resentment had finally found its perfect home. In the end, Chloe dropped out of school. The day she was completing the paperwork, I saw her from a distance. She was wearing a large hooded sweatshirt and a mask, keeping herself completely covered. Her mother held her arm, and together they hurried away from the campus where she had once been the center of attention. I heard her family paid a huge price to make the scandal go away, and her father's company took a massive hit because of it. Chloe lost everything she had ever valued: beauty, money, status, love, and her future. The dorm room was finally quiet again. I applied for a single room and moved out of that place, which was filled with so many suffocating memories. Life returned to normal. I was still just a history major, always buried in a pile of books. Only now no one dared to look at me with strange eyes. Sometimes I think about the vendor who sold me the hairpin. He said the pin would choose its own master. It chooses hosts whose hearts are consumed by jealousy and greed, those who wouldn't hesitate to hurt the people closest to them. Chloe fit the criteria perfectly. From beginning to end, I was only the one who handed her the knife. The thing that truly pushed her into the abyss was her own insatiable desire. A year later, I received a full scholarship and an internship opportunity at the Palace Museum. On the day I was leaving for Beijing, I unexpectedly ran into Chloe's younger brother on campus. He used to be a big shot at school, handsome and popular, always surrounded by a crowd. But now he was walking alone, looking dejected. When he saw me, he instinctively avoided my gaze and quickened his pace, as if I were the plague. The sun was bright, and a gentle breeze was blowing. I pulled my suitcase along, ready to uncover more stories buried in history. The end.